has, made a very symbolic gesture in tearing down a copy of the Treaty of Waitangi, that there is an active discussion about whether it's appropriate for somebody with those views to hold a representative position. That's how politics should happen. There should be an outcry. There should be a contest.
So this is the process working?
It's exactly that. I mean, the idea that you're just going to kind of disqualify people from holding public office or holding a public meeting or making their views known is something I'm very, very uncomfortable about. And
even though he calls the treaty a joke, putting an end to the gravy train and labelling ihu mātao protesters land grabbers, you still think he has a voice?
Well, he does have a voice, and he is representing a viewpoint. And much as, we might hate it, the way to address it is exactly the way that it was addressed by tangata whenua, to expose the hypocrisy of the council sort of hosting a position like this, to take action. There is no control over his no one has any control over his sitting on that council now except for himself. And this sort of idea that seems to be pretty generating in our society at the moment, that you can just pass a law against these thoughts, is naive, and we take action. The tangata whenua have taken action.
Master the arguments of your opponents and engage in a debate with them.
Well, even if you want to ignore them, I mean, even if it's direct action, even if it's protest, even if it's shouting.
So are you both?
It's doing something.
Both of you sound like these radical free speeches that we hear about a lot. Are you both one of these pro free speech people?
Well, what's
at all costs?
What's the alternative to free speech?
Tiananmen Square.
While we have you here, Chris, because we've got quite a lot of response to this, can I ask you, while you have the pleasure of having both of your company, when you hear, as a person who did 60 treaty negotiations, when you hear that phrase, putting into the treaty gravy train, what goes through your mind?
Oh, well, I just groan, because I actually think those settlements have been so good for this country in a variety of ways, and people should look at the facts, look at what happened in various areas, and look at all the good that's flowed from them. There will always be the critics, but it's not a gravy train. It's a very positive development that was started by National and has been advanced since the mid-90s, and it's working.
You want to comment on that, Lila?
Oh, totally concur. I mean, there's a lot more to do, and we've got to keep being able to move with issues. I mean, the idea that somehow the ihu mātao issue can't be dealt with because there's been a full and final settlement, well, I mean, that's contentious anyway. But even if there had been, so what? Why can't people raise new issues, make new demands, win new battles?
Oh, I've got the answer to ihu mātao, but I've given it and I won't bore you with it.
Part 2. What a grunty panel this has been. Lila Hare and Chris Finlayson, it's been a pleasure to have you both on. Thank you very much for being with me this afternoon, and have a great long weekend to you all. Thank you to my producer, Ali Ventura. Checkpoint next. I'm Wallace Chapman. See you Tuesday.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere nei, an elderly South Auckland man is found emaciated and living in squalor at a social housing block. Other residents say they raised the red flag with the unit managers. So where's the balance between standing back and stepping in? How firefighters brought the raging convention centre blaze under control, and the first images revealing the extent of the damage inside. The All Blacks faced the biggest hurdle to a Rugby World Cup three-peat. We'll find out how fans are gearing up from Tokyo to Taranaki. And marchers in Whanganui call for an end to a string of violent deaths of Māori women. RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with tēnei. About 300 people have marched through Whanganui city centre today calling for an end to family violence. This year alone, 5 women have been killed in the city and were all Māori. Brenda Rubin, the mother of Jasmine Wilson, who died in August after a vicious beating, says she was sad to be back so soon after her daughter's death.
What do you say other than we need this to stop? We have to start with our own whānau. We have to sit inside our own selves and figure out what's going wrong.
Brenda Rubin, the mother of Jasmine Wilson. The community was driven to take to the streets by the violent death of 23-year-old Fiona Mackay-Pātea. A man was arrested and charged over her death yesterday. The public gallery at Whanganui District Court was packed this afternoon for the first appearance of a 26-year-old Taranaki man charged with the murder of Ms Mackay-Pātea. The 23-year-old's body was found at a Castle Cliff property on October the 3rd after police visited to investigate a missing persons complaint. The man's appearance was greeted with tears by supporters, with some standing to tell him they loved him. Auckland is open for business. That's the message from CBD businesses who've suffered from the Sky City International Convention Centre fire. Firefighters are continuing to douse hotspots inside the building, but the smoke has largely cleared from the area and life is starting to return to normal in the central city. Heart of the City Chief Executive Viv Beck says the fire has been devastating for Auckland, with lost trading, dumped stock and clean-up costs likely to reach many millions of dollars. She hopes people will make the trip into town this weekend.
Come on in. It's Labour weekend. We've got an event on the waterfront. We've got an exhibition opening at the Art Gallery tonight. We've got the All Black England game. Yes, please come on in and support the businesses. It's been a very difficult few days and we'd love to see you in the heart of the city.
Viv Beck from Heart of the City. Westland's Mayor says a large rock wall will hopefully protect a rubbish dump above Fox Glacier. The same dump released tons of rubbish during a storm earlier this year, sparking a clean-up effort involving hundreds of volunteers, the Defence Force and the Department of Conservation. At the time, Doc told Checkpoint they were racing to get the work completed before Labour weekend, when heavy rain usually starts, causing flooding. The town's Mayor, Bruce Smith, says $400,000 spent on the rock wall will enhance it before the rains. The council is looking at how the dump can be moved permanently. An Auckland man who slit the throat of his flatmate's puppy has been jailed for more than 2 years. Micah Brotherston was sentenced in the North Shore District Court after he was convicted of ill treatment and ill treatment of an animal. Sarah Robson has more.
As well as a 26-month jail term, Brotherston has been disqualified from owning animals for 7 years. It's the longest sentence ever handed down for an SPCA prosecution. The SPCA said Brotherston slit the throat of the 10-month-old Kelpie Cross puppy after he accused his flatmates of stealing his property and ordered them to leave. One of the flatmates interrupted him while he was cutting the throat of a second dog. Ko Sarah Robson, aho.
One of the country's busiest highways is set to come under even more pressure from roadworks over Labour weekend. The Transport Agency is asking people travelling in Northland to plan ahead and expect delays. The agency says there are several construction sites along State Highway 1 north of Auckland, which is also known as the Holiday Highway. They are Dome Valley, Brindurwin Hills, Loop Road and Tarewa Road. It says construction crews are not working during the long weekend, but drivers should reduce speed in those areas. The Transport Agency says the busiest time travelling from Auckland is until 7 o'clock tonight and coming back midday to early evening on Monday. It says people should check their cars, drive to the conditions and take regular breaks. Uluru has reopened after high winds prevented people climbing the Australian landmark on the last day it is open to the public. Hundreds of people have been waiting at the base of the sacred site, which will be closed for good tonight after requests from Indigenous Australians. Melbourne man Dean Beveridge is there and says there is a respectful way people can experience Uluru without it closing to the public.
It's been welcomed by Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians into their sacred places, and whilst I respect that, I wish there was an opportunity for them to maybe understand that there are different ways that we show respect to people's religious sites.
Dean Beveridge previously climbed the rock 16 years ago. The Indigenous custodians of Uluru, the Anangu people, say they want it closed for reasons of safety and to protect it as a sacred site. It's 5:05. The All Blacks coach Steve Hansen says the scrum is still one of the most important parts of a test match and he's confident his side can handle the big English pack. The two teams square off in tomorrow night's blockbuster Rugby World Cup semi-final in Yokohama, and the set piece will be vital to each side's chances of success. England have a good forward pack and they'll try to bully the All Blacks at the set piece. Hansen says scrum coach Mike Cron will have the All Blacks up to task.
The scrum is still one of the most important things in the game. We don't talk about it a lot, but we do a lot of work on it. We've got one of the best scrum coaches in the world, I think. He's revolutionary. He's never stopped still. Our scrum functions pretty well, and it'll need to on Saturday.
All Blacks coach Steve Hansen. The Kiwis fullback Roger Tuivasa-Sheck says he's looking forward to the match up with the NRL's best player in tonight's Trans-Tasman Rugby League test in Wollongong. Sheck, playing in his first test for the Kiwis since 2017, will face off against Dally M winner James Tedesco, who's in the fullback position for Australia. Sheck says it's an exciting prospect facing off against the NRL winner.
It's always good to play against the best, and right across the board, Aussie and New Zealand, it's all the best running out today, and that's where I like to be at, play against the best, and that's where we're really tested.
Kiwis fullback Roger Tuivasa-Sheck. The kick-off is at 10:10 tonight. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, Dunedin's new mayor, Aaron Hawkins, selects the mixtape. Country Life's got the beef on the latest cattle breed to hit the paddocks. New York-based New Zealander Miriam Clancy is our Friday Night Live act, because this week's element is oxygen, introduced to us by Marcus Jones. We have a sonic tonic dedicated to the stuff that we breathe. So join me, Brian Crump, in the air tonight, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Manawatu, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Cloudy periods today, chance of a shower or two in the west, mainly fine tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers tonight, fine tomorrow. Hortolwhenua, Kapiti and Wellington, mainly fine, but cloudy periods tomorrow with late showers near the ranges. For Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges and Banks Peninsula tonight. Bulla and Westland, showers north of Hokitika, clearing overnight. Scattered rain or drizzle developing in Westland tomorrow evening. Fiordland, mainly fine tonight, rain developing tomorrow. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods with a few showers tonight, fine and warm tomorrow, but showers about Stewart Island. And Chatham Islands, occasional showers gradually clearing tomorrow. RNZ National, it's 5:08.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. No one deserves to die that way. The words of a resident of a social housing complex where an elderly man may have laid emaciated in his squalid unit for several days before being rushed to hospital, where he died this morning. The notorious bank robber and former long-term prisoner Leslie Morris Green, who was in his early 80s, had been living at a South Auckland complex run by the New Zealand arm of the Australian not-for-profit Compass. Earlier this year, some residents complained to Checkpoint about Compass's handling of antisocial behaviour at the complex. At that time, Compass had received more than $3.3 million in government subsidies since 2016. It houses vulnerable people and, as part of its contract, is expected to connect tenants to, quote, appropriate support services, social supports. Residents living at the Papatoetoe flats say they raised a red flag with Compass more than a week ago. Len Christian says Mr Green hadn't been seen out and about for days, which was unusual for the keen cyclist.
He was always riding his bike. You'd see him in New Lynn or Papakura, just everywhere around Auckland. So he'd always say good morning. He'd always call the cat over and give the cat a pat before he left, and when he'd come back he'd always stop and say hello and again pat the cat, and then he'd have a meal, and that's why I got worried, because he always brought his leftovers, takeaways around for the cat and put it in my garden, and I hadn't noticed it, and that's when I got concerned that if he's not going out he's not eating.
So when you saw the bike parked up there and you hadn't seen him, what kind of went through your head?
Initially, I thought he might be dead in the unit. His curtains were pulled. I knocked on the door was locked. I got no answer the first time. And it was a couple of days later when a friend of his come around because he hadn't seen him either for a number of weeks.
So you went and you tried to make contact with him?
Yes, yeah. I also asked the others if they'd seen him, the other tenants in the complex, and they all sort of started thinking, oh shit, no, we haven't seen him either for a while.
Did you tell anyone from Compass that you were worried?
Yes, I raised it with the manager and said I'm really concerned. No one's seen Les for at least 2 weeks at that stage. And she said, I'll go, just leave it with me, I'll check on him. About 5-10 minutes later she came back and said, oh no, he's fine. I don't know whether she actually made contact with him or not. But there's no way he could have deteriorated that fast within a week. That was a week prior to me ringing the ambulance.
Someone else had noticed Les wasn't around either. He'd normally cycle each week to visit a mate in Green Lane, but was a no-show 2 weeks in a row. So that friend went looking for him too. And on Tuesday, he and Len managed to get into Les's flat. What they found was utterly disturbing.
I know this is really hard, Len, but can you tell me when you got into the unit and you saw him, what condition was he in?
Disgusting. Worse than pictures you see of the Holocaust during the Second World War. He had no meat left on his bones. It was just skin and bone, basically. I helped him sit up for the ambulance crew, and my fingers actually went in between his rib cage. It was that bad.
I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
Could he talk to you at that stage?
No, he just held my hand. And, yeah, basically. And I just asked him to go with the ambulance because he didn't want to go. And he agreed. And, I wasn't even able to see him at the hospital when I went in. He was in intensive care, and they were hoping to get him into a ward.
So he went straight to intensive care?
Yes, yeah.
You could see the conditions in his little apartment?
Yes.
Can you describe those to me?
At one stage of my life, I was a cleaner for Uluru Borough Council. I've never seen public toilets as bad as the condition of his unit. The shower, the toilet were black, never been cleaned. Microwave was black inside, maggots on the bench. His mattress on his bed was just covered in blood spots, and you could actually see the bed bugs jumping around. It smelt of stale urine. It was very hard to breathe in there with the smell.
So it was filthy?
Yeah.
And you don't have to take Len's word for it. Another resident filmed inside the squalid unit after Les Green was taken to hospital. To the bathroom first. The toilet is absolutely caked with filth. It looks like months' worth. The camera pans to a grey-looking basin, thick with grime. The person filming moves into what looks like a motel kitchenette. The fridge door swings open. It's empty, bar a few wrappers and scraps. Open cans, discarded containers, milk bottles and remnants of food litter the bench. Mixed in with all of that rubbish are what looks like maggots. In that same open plan room, the floor is covered with life's leftovers and discards, and the bed is heavily soiled, flecked with what could be stains or the bed bugs that Len has described. Simply put, it is revolting.
And to get to that stage, it would have taken a long time. It wasn't filth from a week or 2 weeks. It was just, yeah.
And him, from when you saw him on that day and the last time you would have seen him out wandering around or on his bike, how would you describe the change in his physical condition?
Oh, dramatic from one extreme to the other. It was just, it's hard to describe. It's basically like looking at a breathing corpse. He was that bad.
You don't think he had been eating or drinking?
No.
What do you think that Compass's obligations should be to tenants?
I think the impression I got when I was offered the property through WINS was that they were a social housing provider with wraparound services.
Having seen what you saw, Len, having seen Les and seen his room, do you think it's possible that this could have happened in just a few days?
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Must have been hard for you to see him like that.
It was. Yeah. Especially when it was so unnecessary. If they had have assisted him 6 months ago, or from the time he moved in, he'd still be with us today. You know? There's no need for anyone to die in those conditions. It's just disgusting in our country that it's allowed to happen. And my fear is they're getting new apartments all over Auckland, and they're not looking after the ones they've got. And they're taking on more and more clients every day. And, you know, with no services or systems in place to protect them or to look after them. It's mind-boggling.
Resident Len Christian there, and Compass Housing says it is a difficult balance between respecting someone's privacy and providing for their welfare. They say they did check on Les Green but didn't go into his unit. Compass says it has fulfilled its responsibilities to its tenants and it arranged for another social agency to visit him, but Mr Green was taken to hospital before that could happen. And you can hear an interview with Compass Housing New Zealand's General Manager, Bernadette Pinnell, after the 6 o'clock news. It is about 16 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keen for your feedback on that. So you can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Where is the line between respecting somebody's privacy and intervening and giving them, welfare assistance? The All Blacks are 2 wins away from a historic third Rugby World Cup win, but tomorrow's semi-final against England has been described as the biggest hurdle to get there. They are currently the 2 best teams in the world, but the history between them is not so even. In the last 15 years, the All Blacks have taken on England and won 15 times. The English have won once at Twickenham in 2012. If you need a reminder, here's what losing to England sounds like.
England have scored the first points. Here's a drop kick from Farrell, and the drop kick is over. 9-0. Oh, intercept! It's going to be a try at the other end. All Blacks looking to salvage something. Quick hands required here. Is over. A famous and deserved victory for England.
England have never beaten the All Blacks in a World Cup. New Zealand won in the pool stage in 1991 and 1999 and toppled the English in Cape Town in the 1995 semi-final with that iconic try from Jonah Lomu running right over the top of Mike Catt. At this afternoon's press conference, prop Joe Moody responded to a question about England's sizeable pack and whether they can win the physical battle.
If we can beat them around the park, that's going to be a big step for us to, implement our game plan and get one up on them. But at the same time, we've got to be able to dominate those physical battles as well. So I guess it's a bit of a balancing act, and 50-50.
Assistant coach Ian Foster says the game could be won or lost on the scrums and lineouts.
My serious advice to Moves is just to push and push harder. That's about the limit of my extent. But can I just say is that we've the quality of your set piece is key, and rugby hasn't changed over all the years with all the different things that happen to it. There's a simplicity that if you scrum well and line out well, you've got a good chance.
And sports reporter Clay Wilson has been at the press conference in a very rainy Tokyo and joins us now. Clay, there's been a lot of talk about pressure this week. Was that a hot topic again today?
Kia ora, Lisa. Yeah, not so much today, interestingly. There's obviously been so much talk about pressure this week. Perhaps also the media as well as the players and coaches have grown tired about talking about it. We of course had Eddie Jones's very colourful press conference on Tuesday, mounting the pressure on the All Blacks, and then Steve Hansen responding yesterday, talking about Jones's tactics to take the pressure off his own team. Ian Foster did touch on it a little bit. He was asked a question about how the All Blacks have managed to stay on top for so long in their sport. He said they know there's huge expectation and pressure on each game they play. It's something they come to live with, and that's just the same for this test. So they're not feeling too much different than any other test, with every test being one they're expected to win across the world.
So also much discussion about the forward packs. What about the backs? How do they match up?
Yeah, the most talked about thing in the backs this week has been the Owen Ford, the George Ford-Owen Farrell combination at 10 and 12 for England. And Ian Foster did touch on that today, and he said he expects that means England will want to play a ball-in-hand type of game. They also can play a kick-centric game with those two fly halves on the field, but he expects England might play a ball-in-hand game. Either way, he said it's going to be a tough challenge. Two very high-quality players. Ford didn't start against Australia. Farrell started with Manu Tuolangi at 12, so they've opted to go with the dual first fives again in this match. So let's see if it works out that they are going to try and tuck the ball up their shirts and play with it a bit.
So this match is in Yokohama, and the All Blacks, well, they're still in Tokyo. So why have they left it so late to travel?
Well, this is not unusual for the All Blacks. Typically, when they're out of New Zealand, they don't do a traditional captain's run. Of course, Friday is the captain's run today here in Tokyo or down in Yokohama. England have gone down, but getting down to Yokohama is about a 2-hour bus ride for the players or a 1-hour train ride for commuters. So it's a bit of a long haul. So typically the All Blacks, they don't like to put their players through the arduous travel of getting to a ground that's a little bit far away the day before a game, which I guess seems smart. England have opted to go down, get familiar with the surroundings. The All Blacks have taken this approach all tournament. Their kickers have gone to a few grounds on the Friday before games or the day before games, but this is not unusual. A lot of games the All Blacks have trained at a different venue closer to their Tokyo base, so they don't have to go through that travel the day before a big game.
OK, and we're told it's been raining and raining quite steadily there in Tokyo today. What are we expecting weather-wise for the game tomorrow? And is that going to have much impact on the match?
Yeah, the rain has been coming down quite steadily here in Tokyo today, but the forecast for tomorrow, good news, is much better. Clear early on. It's supposed to cloud over a little bit later in the afternoon in Yokohama, but about a 10% chance of showers. So not too much chance of showers as long as the forecast is to be believed. Ian Foster did speak about the fact that it was raining today and what that might do to the ground in Yokohama. He said their experiences, the grounds here in Japan have held up very well even when it's rained the day before a game. So hopefully good news, no rain, so the All Blacks can play that running rugby, that attacking style they love to play, and that'll be hopefully the downfall for All Blacks fans of the England team.
Thanks, Clay. Clay Wilson joining us there from Tokyo. We'll keep all our fingers and toes crossed for the right outcome. Firefighters have revealed new details of how they managed to bring the blaze at Auckland Sky City International Convention Centre under control. 4 days after the fire broke out, crews have described tackling the inferno in pitch black darkness as flaming debris dropped from the roof above. Firefighters are continuing to douse hotspots inside, but the smoke has largely cleared from the area and life is starting to return to normal in the central city. Reporter Matthew Tunison and camera operator Patrice Allen filed this report.
Yep, there you go. Footage from inside the convention centre reveals the extent of the destruction and the hugely challenging task firefighters faced as they tried to douse the flames in front and above them. Incident controller Dave Woon from Fire and Emergency praised the crews who undertook the hugely complex and difficult work.
You can imagine trying to work your way through this in the dark, and I'm talking pitch dark, not knowing where you're going. Multiple hazards around the place, containers, scissor lifts, that sort of thing. Over here you can see the main trusses that look very substantial, but there were also truss in the purlins. We were concerned about the roof falling in between some of those trusses.
As well as being dark with many hazards around them, the fire was across multiple stories and it was impossible for firefighters to see exactly what was happening. That's where the drones came in handy.
I could see a raging fire on the roof from the drone. Our firefighters inside could just see little hotspots because of the construction of the ply, straw, ply, 16mm ply, and the bitumen over the top. And of course, bitumen being waterproof, you put water on, it's just going to go off to the side. So it's one of those really complex, challenging fires.
Last night, Auckland Council received the welcome news that the 8 million litres of water in the convention centre's basement car park is able to be diverted into the wastewater sewage system instead of being pumped straight into the harbour. But Auckland Council's Safe Swim Programme Manager Nick Weigar says people should continue to treat the harbour around the waterfront as hazardous until it's been tested for contaminants.
As of approximately 6:30 yesterday evening, we switched the pumps over and began pumping that basement water to the wastewater network rather than the stormwater network, and that is currently what is happening. At the current rate of pumping, that's estimated to take 4 to 6 days to pump down.
The cordon around the convention centre has significantly reduced in size since Tuesday. A large crane will be brought onto Nelson Street tomorrow, but it's hoped it will only be there until Monday, with plans to get things back to normal by Tuesday. And there were significantly more people out and about in the CBD ahead of the long weekend. But for Jagdich Naran from the florist Roma Blooms on Albert Street, business continues to be very slow, compounded by the disruption caused by the construction of the City Rail link.
For the first 2 days, it has dramatically affected our business. We've sort of had about 3 or 4 customers in during the day. It has a disastrous effect. We've got sort of like flowers that we bought on Monday. All these flowers will be basically given away on Monday.
Part of the City Chief Executive Viv Beck says it's been a devastating event for Auckland, with lost trading, dumped stock and clean-up costs likely to reach many millions of dollars.
It's starting to come back to normal today. Most businesses are open. Obviously the ones close to the fire site are still impacted in different ways, but the city is largely open for business now. So it is starting to return to normal. The mood is definitely picking up.
And she hopes people will get behind the city's businesses.
Come on in. It's Labour weekend. We've got an event on the waterfront. We've got an exhibition opening at the Art Gallery tonight. We've got the All Black England game. Yes, please come on in and support the businesses. It's been a very difficult few days.
Investigations into what caused the fire have begun. In Auckland for Checkpoint, call Matthew Tunis and TNA.
To the UK now, where police have begun the process of moving the bodies of 39 people, all believed to be Chinese nationals, who were found in a refrigerated lorry near Britain's capital. 11 of the victims have been taken by ambulance from the port of Tilbury in Essex to a nearby hospital. Police have been granted extra time to question the lorry driver on suspicion of murdering the 8 women and 31 men. Post-mortem examinations will be the next step in the investigation. The BBC's Ed Thomas reports.
Under police escort and by private ambulance at night, the first of the 39 Chinese nationals have been removed from the lorry trailer at the port of Tilbury docks. Police said the priority was preserving their respect and dignity. An unwanted reminder too of what happened nearly 20 years ago in Dover. Here, 58 Chinese immigrants suffocated in a lorry. It took months for all those who died to be identified. Sam doesn't want to remember. He moved to Grays from China 40 years ago.
When I heard the news this morning, all the 39 people, that's nationalities, are Chinese, I say, why? How? It's happened again.
He lives and works close to where the bodies were found this week.
It's as if 39 people die struggling in freezing cold in the container, in the dark, and no one help.
This is now a major international investigation. Belgian authorities say the container arrived into the port of Zeebrugge at about 2:30 on Tuesday afternoon. It left there, heading across the channel, arriving at Purfleet in Essex. And at 1:05 yesterday morning, the trailer was collected by a lorry. Half an hour later, ambulance staff discovered all 39 bodies inside the container.
and Paul.
Vic makes the same journey to the port of Purfleet.
And obviously if anything was in there, you would see it straight away. And seeing people jumping out of trailers, jumping out of containers, running around.
What are the feelings amongst drivers?
Well, everyone's terrified that they're going to find someone in their vehicles, or worse.
In 2016, the National Crime Agency warned that smuggling gangs were moving from major hubs like Dover to smaller ports like Purfleet. Police are still questioning the lorry driver on suspicion of murder. He's been named locally in Northern Ireland as 25-year-old Mo Robinson. Police say it'll take until the weekend to remove all the bodies and to begin to find the answers they need.
The BBC's Ed Thomas reporting. Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, Wellington's ousted mayor asks for a recount done by hand. And former All Blacks captain Sean Fitzpatrick on why England is a force to be reckoned with. And in Australia, Uluru opens to hundreds of climbers for the final time. We'd love to hear from you about anything you've heard on the program this evening. You can get in touch via text 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, and we do love an email. Our email address is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's go now, though, to the headlines with Susanna.
A resident of a social housing complex in Auckland has told Checkpoint he believes an elderly man may have laid emaciated in his unit for several days before he was rushed to hospital, where he died this morning. Resident Len Christian says Leslie Morris Green, who was in his early 80s, had been living in the complex for vulnerable people. Residents at the Papatoetoe flats say they raised a red flag with Compass, the organisation that runs the complex, more than a week ago. Earlier this year, residents complained about how Compass had handled antisocial behaviour there. About 300 people have marched through Whanganui's city centre today, calling for an end to family violence. The community was driven to take to the streets by the violent death of 23-year-old Fiona Mackay-Patea. This year alone, 5 women have been killed in the city and were all Māori. Firefighters are continuing to douse the inside of the Sky City Convention Centre, but life is starting to return to normal in the central city. Auckland businesses who've suffered after closing due to smoke from fire have largely reopened. Meanwhile, cleaners and a team of scientists have been working on the precinct. Wellington's former Mayor Justin Lester says he's not confident a recount will see him back in council chambers. Mr Lester has applied for a vote recount after the local body election saw him lose his mayoralty to Andy Foster by the smallest of margins, just 62 votes. The former mayor lodged the paperwork at the Wellington District Court this afternoon, and now a judge will decide if a recount will go ahead. An Auckland man who slit the throat of his flatmate's puppy has been jailed for more than 2 years. Micah Brotherston, who was sentenced in the North Shore District Court after he was convicted of ill treatment of an animal. Those are the latest news headlines from RNZ National. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna, and thank you for joining us. This is Checkpoint, and I'm Lisa Owen. It's time now for our Friday Business Wrap with Nona Peltier. Nona, Sinalay Milk, so they're purchasing Dairyworks. What does all of this mean?
Well, Dairyworks is a fairly large company. Maybe people aren't aware of it, but they would buy or be familiar with some of their brands. They supply, I think it says here, half of New Zealand's cheese, nearly half.
Oh, I
Who
love
knew?
a good bit of cheese.
A quarter of its butter supply, yes, as well as a brand which apparently is very good, which I've never tried, is the Deep South ice cream. Might be familiar to some of our listeners. Don't know. But anyway, they also have brands Rolling Meadow and Alpine. Alpine butter, familiar? No?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, well, they sell those products into New Zealand and Australia. And this is very important because Sinlay is looking to get into the consumer market, and the consumer market in Australia. So this is a good place for it to go. Sinlay Milk is a producer, and they have recently been buying consumer brands. Recently, they bought a Talbot Forest, which is a cheese company as well, and they have additionally cheese brands. So the company's really making big moves there. This particular purchase is $112 million. They're waiting overseas investment office approval to do that because Sinlay has a large foreign investor in that company. And so, they're really excited about it. They're hoping that it all goes through. And if so, it will give them quite a few brands to sell into the market with their special milk. They are the ones who supplied A2 milk That's the company that did very well in China and is one of the largest companies now listed on the New Zealand market. And they're just marketers of, believe it or not, Synlay's milk. So there you go.
Hey, you mentioned the Overseas Investment Office there. This is really interesting. A couple of big foreign investors in a New Zealand company. Now, they could be forced to sell up following an investigation by the Overseas Investment Office. What's going on?
It's all about the good character test.
Okay.
So you have to have good character to invest in New Zealand companies. And the brothers Joesley and Wesley Batista of Brazil, they're known as the Brazilian Butchers, they're brothers, twin brothers as a matter of fact, they were caught up in a corruption scandal over there, ordered to pay over $3 billion in fines, and this was in May 2017. So the Overseas Investment Office looked at this and said, wait a minute, these guys own a company in Australia which has a controlling interest in Synlay, so you might have to sell because you're not of good character. However, we're prepared to let you see how you go as long as half of your members of the board are independent. So there you go. Now, I should say Scott Technology, this is the company they own shares in, their share price fell today, but that's mostly because they had a soft earnings report. So it really wasn't so much to do with this little bit of scandal, but there you go.
And what else has been happening on the markets today?
Okay, well, let's see. The NZX Top 50 Index, it fell more than 0.33%. That was down 43 points to 10,789. And the Kiwis traded at 63.7 US cents, 93.4, and we've hardly moved at all. 49.6 British pence, still
stuck under the 50 mark. Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with our business wrap there. Well, Wellington's former mayor, Justin Lester, isn't quite ready to let the mayoral chains slip through his fingers. He's applied for a recount after losing the mayoralty in the local elections a fortnight ago to Mayor-elect Andy Foster by 62 votes. Now, today, Mr Lester lodged paperwork in the District Court asking for not just a recount, but one done by hand. Laura Dooney reports.
Outside the Wellington District Court, Justin Lester told reporters the election cost about $1 million to run, so it was important to get the right result.
This is a sliding doors moment for the city. There's potential to end up with a New Zealand First Mayor with Andy Foster versus a Labour Mayor with very different values. So I think it's important, and also I owe it to the 27,000 people that have voted for me.
The recount also includes what are called informal or invalid votes. Votes where a voter has not indicated a clear preference or where the vote is invalid for another reason. But a judge can look at those votes and perhaps rule that the intent of the voter is clear, giving that vote to the intended recipient. Mr Lester says if the informal votes were included, he'd emerge the victor.
Based on there being 302 votes that have already been counted, we know that 193 of those preference me, 109 preference my opponent, Andy Foster, but they weren't ruled as valid, and we all want to make a strong case that they should be included, and that could change the result of the election.
Justin Lester's lawyer, Graham Edgeler, explains why he's requesting a hand recount rather than just running the votes through the same computer system again.
How do you know that the computer's got it right? And the one way you do is someone has to look at them to check the computers were right. And so that's what we're asking the judge to order. The judge can order a computer recount, the judge can order a hand recount. We've, I think, put some good reasons why it should be a hand recount, just to check.
He says the voter's intention is what the judge will be trying to determine when he looks at the informal votes.
If you can work out what they intend, then you should count their votes if possible, and that's what we're going to try and say to the judge we ought to do here, and particularly those 302 votes, but possibly others among the 5,000 that didn't preference to either Justin or Andy.
Graham Edgeler says the court is likely to get in touch next week to advise the next steps in the process. Justin Lester has the support of Councillor Jill Day, who was his deputy mayor, and will be again if Mr Lester is reinstated.
I think it'd be fair to say that Justin was my preferred option. Obviously, I was supporting him through the campaign.
And she says she's not the only one.
I know of a number of councillors who were looking forward to working with Justin as mayor again. It was a real shock for everybody. Everybody who was deeply involved did not expect this outcome at all.
Jill Day says Andy Foster will face some challenges around the council table. Councillor Diane Calvert was part of the mayoral race, but won't be drawn on who she'd like to see as head of the council table.
As long as
everyone wants to make Wellington a better place, and we put Wellington first, not the beehive, then I can accept any outcome.
The cost of a recount is estimated to be about $100,000. Council insurance will cover half, with the rest coming out of ratepayers' pockets. Mayor-elect Andy Foster wouldn't be interviewed, but said in a statement council officers will participate fully in the court process, and in the meantime, he and councillors are getting on with doing the job. A council spokesperson says the inauguration of the mayor and councillors-elect is still going ahead next Wednesday. I te Whanganui a Tara, mo te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Laura Dooney tēnei.
The Māori community of Whanganui has taken to the city streets, calling for an end to a string of violent deaths of Māori women. Today, a 26-year-old Taranaki man appeared in the Whanganui District Court, accused of murdering 23-year-old Fiona Mackay-Pātea earlier this month. She's the fifth Māori woman to suffer a violent death in Whanganui this year, with locals calling for more resources to tackle P and urging people to stop sweeping family violence under the rug. Our Māori news correspondent, Lee Marama McLaughlin, was there.
Ka ki mai ngā waine! Ka ki mai ngā pepe!
Miriam Arokawa, Lorna Ann Marie Thompson, Khalees Smith, Jasmine Wilson, and just this month, Fiona Mackay-Pātea. All these wahine Māori violently killed in Whanganui this year alone. The latest death of Ms Mackay-Pātea, enough to drive 300 people to march the main street.
We need you to share this to the country, that we, as Ngā Pairangi Iwi, as Whanganui, Nui Tonu, say no.
The group was mostly Māori and included kura kaupapa students, children, police and kaumātua. The march ended at the city centre at Majestic Square, where there were speeches. Desiree McLean says Māori are mourning.
Well, hurting actually, quite deeply. Yeah, and enough is enough. We just need to help each other. Family violence starts really early, and I think we've had enough actually.
In August, elderly woman Lorraine Smith was convicted of the murder of 13-year-old Khalees Smith. Jared Dent and Eric Mete are both awaiting murder trials following the deaths of Miriam Arokawa and Lorna Ann Thompson, respectively. They have both pleaded not guilty. The accused in the most recent two deaths are men. Local man Charles Chadwick says it's unacceptable.
I'm here to support the men against violence, to just make sure that these things don't happen again. It's been, how many is it? Been 4 or 5 already this year? So it's just not good enough. We need to sort our shit out.
For many, this is the second time they've turned up at Majestic Square in recent weeks for a similar cause. A vigil was held there last month for Jasmine Wilson, who was viciously beaten in August and died. Her mother, Brenda Rubin, is sad to be back.
It's been on the heels of the vigil, which really did upset me. She's a young, beautiful 23-year-old mummy, even though she's my daughter. What do you say other than we need this to stop? We have to start with our own whānau. We have to sit inside our own selves and figure out what's going wrong.
Just yesterday, a 26-year-old man was charged with the murder of Ms Fiona Mackay-Pātea. As it happens, he was to appear in the Whanganui District Court, which backs onto Pākaitore, where the march was kicking off, at the same time. Ms Mackay-Pātea's uncle, Mahanga Williams, says that was hard for the family.
I'm sure it's upsetting for them. He was supposed to have his court at 11 o'clock today, but I had contacted the police and asked the judge if they could move his court to the afternoon. He might be next door and then, don't want to upset the spirit of the hikoi. We want to get everyone in a good frame and then get them on the march to get here safely. The march arrived without any hiccups. It was led by Ngā Pairangi Iwi.
The vibe at Majestic Square was warm and inviting, with more than 100 people singing waiata and performing action songs. But the message is still a very serious one. Mr. Williams says these are desperate times and they need more resources for services led by Māori.
I think the P drug doesn't help. There's a lot of that behind it. But at the end of the day, we need programs to educate our men and how to become good, caring, responsible men. You know, we can be good men, but if we're not responsible for our actions and that, then we haven't learned anything. That's why I'm a big on the kaupapa of getting our programs delivered in all schools.
The 26-year-old man charged with murdering Ms Makai Pātea wore a grey t-shirt and green track pants in his first court appearance this afternoon. Police believe she was killed sometime between the 20th of September and the 3rd of October when she was found. The accused is also facing a raft of dishonesty charges and a theft charge connected to the victim. The public gallery was packed out. Several people broke down in tears, some standing to tell him they loved him. Mo te hōtaka o te ata, ko li Marama McLaughlin tēnei.
It's 14 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Former All Blacks captain Sean Fitzpatrick says England will be a force to be reckoned with tomorrow night. It will be the first time the two teams have met at a Rugby World Cup since 1995. But Fitzpatrick says both teams are fitter and stronger. And he says the influence of former All Blacks coach turned England defence coach John Mitchell should not be underestimated. He told Joe Porter about the pressure the All Blacks will be under tomorrow night.
I think New Zealand has the experience to deal with it better than anyone else. We had it last week against Ireland. A lot of those guys hadn't played in a quarter-final before. And this Saturday, England, none of them have been involved in a knockout game in a World Cup, so New Zealand's well placed for that. We've been there before. We've won a quarter-final, and it's people say it's hard to back up. It's not hard because you're playing a semi-final, which will give you the right if you win to play in a final. So we've got plenty of experience in that. We've got some really young, enthusiastic guys. So I'm pretty relaxed in terms of that side of it. I'm still nervous, but we have the experience to deal with the pressure of playing in a semi-final.
The selection of Scott Barrett at blindside, is that in response to the size, the physicality of the English pack? Yeah, I think he's looked at it, and that's probably something where the game's evolved a bit in the last sort of 18 months, is that teams look at opposition teams more than they probably have in the past in terms of just worrying about their own game. They're now looking at the threats that opposition teams pose, and we did a good job last week on Ireland, and I'm sure they've done the same. Attention to detail in terms of preparing a game plan to beat England. The line-out's important. To have that extra firepower in the line-out, the extra firepower in the scrum, and I think the big thing that a lot of people haven't been talking about is his ball-carrying ability. Scott Barrett brings to it, and people have forgotten that. Probably for the last 18 months he's been the forward in New Zealand rugby. So him starting, I don't think Sam Cane's been dropped, but just giving us another string to our bow, and to have a 23 like we have, to have Sam coming off the bench for the last 30 minutes to inject that sort of power could be crucial. Do you expect the English forwards to try and suffocate the All Blacks, slow down their ball so that their backs can't get their rhythm going and get their game going? It's quite an attritional game. It's the Brits play, and the English have shown, and even especially last week against Australia, they tend to play a lot of kick chase. They're very fit, which traditionally they haven't been overly fit. They're very fit. Their defensive lines are very good. I think John Mitchell's done a great job in terms of defence. So we need to be patient. We need to start like we did last week. England are going to have a crack at us, and that's good, and we'll have a crack at them, and may the best team win. So what's the key for the All Blacks to unlock that impregnable English defence? Oh, they just got to keep going. Keep doing what they did. Last week it broke down pretty early, but they just need to be patient, work really hard. And eventually the holes will come. The pace of the game is so crucial, and we saw that last week. Least mistakes, you can't give away penalties. They've got the best kicker in world rugby at the moment in terms of success rate. So we can't afford to give away the penalties we gave away last week. And with that, it could take 79 minutes. Last week we were lucky. It's sort of 22 points up after sort of 25 minutes. It took a bit of pressure off, but this week it could be 80, 81, 82 minutes.
Do you expect to see a lot of attacking variation again from the All Blacks this week?
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll have a different game plan to break England down. I wouldn't be surprised, as you'll see this afternoon, they'll probably start with forward, which is different, so they're thinking differently. They may be a little bit concerned about Barrett starting in terms of their line out. Their 6 and 7 aren't overly big, which, as I said, defensively for us, that's cool, because it will put pressure on them, and if you give us opportunities in that first 20 minutes, that could be the difference.
Being over here in Japan and being around the All Blacks, has it brought back memories of your heydays?
Oh, I love it. It's a real privilege to be involved. To have dinner with them on Tuesday night was really cool. As I said to Grant Fox, it's such a privilege to be invited. To see JK and Michael Jones and Conrad Smith was neat. But it's just what I loved was just seeing how they're continuing that legacy of the jersey. They're very passionate. They want to win. It's not about the money. It's about being in the best possible shape they can be, and they're definitely in that. They're a wonderful group of men, and I wish them the best of luck.
What did you say to them?
I didn't say anything. We didn't say anything. We just met them, and some of the guys we hadn't met before. But no, we just had a chit chat, and it's just being there and being involved, and continuing that legacy.
I suppose it made you think about all the memories you've made and how these young guys are making their own memories and how special it is.
Yeah, I think so. We belong to the best club in the world, so to be around it again, and I'm a real enthusiast. I love the All Blacks. I love watching rugby, and to be at a World Cup. This World Cup is probably one of the best I've ever been to be in Asia for the first time, I was at the stadium on the Sunday after the All Black game to see the Japanese play South Africa, and the atmosphere there was just a festival of rugby, and that's what's so good about our game and so good about it being here in Japan.
Do you have a prediction for Saturday?
I think the All Blacks will win. The English are going to have to play really well to beat the All Blacks, but as I said, that's possible. So we're going to play well, and the All Blacks know that. If they don't play well, they could lose.
Pacific Rugby, do you think New Zealand Rugby and World Rugby can do anything to help grow the game in the Pacific, help those Tier 2 teams be a little bit more competitive on a regular basis?
Well, I think World Rugby needs to, I'm sure they're trying to do that, but we just can't have them coming to the party once every 4 years and then saying see you later. We need a global competition which helps those guys, and I think Steve Hansen spoke about it this week in terms of we need to be less selfish and think about the global game rather than just looking after ourselves.
When it boils down to it, you look at the way Tonga improved throughout the World Cup simply by having regular games against top tier opposition. To look at Japan and their build up, having of course played the All Blacks last year, beating France and being together in camp for so long. Is that basically the key? You play better opposition more regularly and you improve?
I think you need better coaches too. I think coaching is important, and I think we saw that with Namibia with Phil Davies, how good they were. But we need more competition. They need to be exposed to Tier 1 nations more often than they are. And then we can, instead of being once every 4 years, we have it on a regular basis where we see, games like Uruguay beating Fiji. How good was that? Not because I love Fiji, but that was in terms of rugby. And then Japan doing so well to beat Ireland and Scotland is just phenomenal for the game in terms of its growth. And we've seen it here. To have 60-odd million people watching the game last week on TV is out of this world, and it's only going to help our game.
Last question, who wins the other semi-final, the Box in Wales?
Gats is a very good coach, so he's a wily character, but I just think, what I've seen from the Box so far, I always said that hopefully that would see the Springboks playing the All Blacks in the final. I can't see that changing. I think the Springboks have just been under the radar a bit. They're just growing nicely. They've got a massive team. The impact at the collision area last Sunday in Japan was pretty immense, and they've been coached very well again. So as I said, it's no surprise we've got the 4 best coaches in the world at this stage of the competition.
And that's former All Blacks captain Sean Fitzpatrick. Work is well underway on a large rock wall aimed at protecting a dump above Fox Glacier Township. The same dump released tons of rubbish during a storm earlier this year, sparking a clean-up effort consisting of hundreds of volunteers, the Defence Force and the Department of Conservation. At the time, DOC told Checkpoint they were racing to get the work completed before Labour weekend, when heavy rain usually starts to hit, causing flooding. The council is looking at how the dump can be moved permanently, but Mayor Bruce Smith told our South Island reporter Logan Church that something had to be done in the meantime.
At Fox Glacier, what's happened is that the original emergency rock work to protect the dump from the Fox River has now been strengthened. Council has let a contract for a little bit under $400,000 to significantly enhance the rock work that's there. And so that's going to improve the chances of the river not being able to do what it did last time. We're also a long way along the path towards looking at digging the dump out and relocating it. We're not sure where it's going to be relocated to yet. We're going through a number of options, which staff will report to Council at some stage in the very near future.
What does that rock work look like that's happening now?
Oh, big boulders, almost like a wall.
And why is it important to do that work now, especially as we head into spring?
Well, it's important. Look, we never know when the major floods are going to occur, but spring is a pretty favourable time. But what we've got is up the Fox Glacier Valley is a creek called Mills Creek, and Mills Creek is the largest moving slip in New Zealand, and it's moving down into the riverbed, and as it hits the riverbed, the gravel is being washed downstream under the bridge at the State Highway and further down. So the riverbed is raising. It's being raised all the time, and so it's very important that we attend to this to ensure that disastrous situation that occurred on the 26th of March doesn't occur again.
The Westland Mayor Bruce Smith speaking to our reporter Logan Church. To Australia now, and one of Australia's most famous landmarks will be officially out of bounds to climbers from tonight. The Uluru climb in Australia's Northern Territory is closing because of its cultural significance to traditional owners and for safety concerns. But as the ABC's Stephanie Smale reports, it was too windy earlier today, meaning some final climbers didn't get the chance.
Hundreds of people hoping to make it to the top of Uluru before the climb is closed are trapped at the bottom, with high winds making it too dangerous to make the trek. Despite its cultural significance and warnings from traditional owners, visitors from around the world have been climbing the landmark for decades. But from this afternoon, that's over. Sarah Madison is the co-director of the Indigenous Settler Relations collaboration at the University of Melbourne.
It marks, I think, a shift, hopefully a shift in the way that non-Indigenous people will have to start engaging with our place on these territories that in some fundamental ways are not ours and will never be ours.
Sarah Madison says she hopes the move prompts similar action for landmarks, small and large, across the country.
There are sacred places all over this country that non-Indigenous people have been asked not to visit. We've treated those decisions in the past with utter disregard. I'm sure many listeners will recall some of the stories of, various developments that have seen, portable toilets put on sacred sites. We know better than that as a nation.
Is more work needed by authorities like state and federal governments to make that clearer in different parts of Australia, though?
Yes, I think that state and territory governments could play, and local governments for that matter, could play a stronger role in ensuring that for both residents and visitors to any part of the country, that there is a greater understanding of whose territory is in that part of the country. The signage around the place, if you're driving as a traveller through Australia, about when you leave one area of traditional country and enter another is very patchy. I often find myself wondering whose territory I'm on, and I would like to have better guidance to ensure that I do behave according to local protocols when I'm visiting a place. And that shouldn't always be the responsibility of Indigenous peoples.
As Uluru's climb closes, debate is swirling around another cultural site, the Grampians National Park in Victoria. Traditional owners want to stop climbing there too, with frustrated climbers claiming they won't negotiate. The Federal Minister for Indigenous Australians, Ken Wyatt, says it will take time to work out the right solution.
I think sometimes some of these elements take longer than people want. There's certainly evidence of some of the ancient artworks being damaged. I get a sense there's been some disrespectful behaviour that has not pleased the traditional owners. There needs to be respect on both sides.
There are significant sacred sites in other parts of the country too, including Wilpena Pound in South Australia, Devil's Pool near Cairns and Lake Mungo in New South Wales.
And that's the ABC's Stephanie Smale reporting there. Some of you getting in touch about our earlier story about an elderly man who was found very ill in his unit, his squalid unit. This piece of feedback, it's not welfare assistance that's needed. It is services aimed at supporting and maintaining the dignity, agency and human rights of people.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui ko Susana Lei Atawa tēnei. Residents of a social housing complex in South Auckland say no one deserves to die the way their elderly neighbour did. Notorious bank robber and former long-time prisoner Leslie Green passed away in hospital today after being found emaciated in his squalid unit in Papatoetoe. Resident Len Christian says he told the Australian community housing provider Compass that he thought something was wrong, but they said Mr Green was fine. Mr Christian says he eventually got into the flat and was shocked about what he found.
He had no meat left on his bones. It was just skin and bone, basically. I helped him sit up for the ambulance crew and my fingers actually went in between his rib cage. It was that bad.
Len Christian. Compass says staff did check on Mr Green but didn't go into the unit. The man accused of murdering Fiona Mackay-Pātea was greeted with tears and shouts of support from the public gallery when he appeared in the Whanganui District Court this afternoon. The 23-year-old, who was found dead earlier this month, is the fifth Māori woman to suffer a violent death in the region this year. Ms Mackay-Pātea's uncle, Mahanga Williams, was among several family members and friends who joined a 300-strong march through the town centre today, calling for an end to the violence.
The P drug doesn't help. There's a lot of that behind it. But at the end of the day, we need programs to educate our men and how to become good, caring, responsible men.
Mahanga Williams says the court appearance of the man accused of murdering his niece was moved to the afternoon in order not to clash with the march. Sky City is cleaning up its precinct in Auckland CBD so business can return to normal after the International Convention Centre fire. The large blaze forced the evacuation of the entire precinct on Tuesday and its hotels, the casino, the Sky Tower and restaurants were closed. Sky City says contractors have been working hard to ensure the precinct is safe and ready for employees and customers. The Sky Tower and selected bars and restaurants have opened throughout the day. The Sky City Hotel and Sky City Grand Hotel have also reopened and are now taking check-ins. Some Auckland businesses are still feeling the effects, despite the city largely getting back to normal. Most shops in the CBD were open again today, with the fire now under control and the smoke dissipating. But Jagdich Naran from the florist Roma Blooms on Albert Street says business continues to be very slow, compounded by the disruption caused by construction of the city rail link.
For the first 2 days, it has dramatically affected our business. We've sort of had about 3 or 4 customers in during the day. It has a disastrous effect. We've got sort of like flowers that we bought on Monday, but we've sort of got the flowers still left over. So all these flowers will be basically given away on Monday.
Jug Dictionary from Roma Blooms on Albert Street. Westland's mayor says a large rock wall will hopefully protect a rubbish dump above Fox Glacier. The same dump released tonnes of rubbish during a storm earlier this year, sparking a clean-up effort consisting of hundreds of volunteers, the Defence Force and the Department of Conservation. At the time, DOC said it was racing to get the work completed before Labour weekend, when heavy rain usually starts to hit the season causing flooding. The council is looking at how the dump can be moved permanently, but Mayor Bruce Smith has told Checkpoint that something had to be done in the meantime.
At Fox Glacier, what's happened is that the original emergency rockwork to protect the dump from the Fox River has now been strengthened. Council has let a contract for a little bit under $400,000 to significantly enhance the rockwork that's there.
The Westland Mayor Bruce Smith. An inauguration of Wellington City Councillors and Mayor-elect will go ahead on Wednesday, despite ousted Mayor Justin Lester applying for a recount of votes. Mr Lester lost to Andy Foster by 62 votes in recent local elections. Today, he lodged papers requesting a recount in the Wellington District Court. In an email to councillors, Council Chief Executive Kevin Lavery says a recount could take some time. He says it's important the Mayor, councillors and committees are empowered to make decisions, otherwise he'd be the only one able to make major decisions during that time. Mr Lavery says it would not be right for him to make any important decisions on his own, so the council and Mayor need to be sworn in. One of the country's busiest highways will come under even more pressure over Labour weekend. The Transport Agency is asking people travelling in Northland to expect delays. Chen Liu reports.
The agency says there are several construction sites along State Highway 1 north of Auckland, also known as the Holiday Highway. The Transport Agency says although construction crews are not working during the long weekend, drivers should reduce speed in areas where there are barriers and cones in place. Affected areas include Dome Valley, Brindlewing Hills, Loop Road and Tariwa Road. The agency says the busiest time to travel from Auckland is until 7 o'clock tonight. The heaviest traffic returning to the city will be from midday to early evening on Monday. Ko Chen Liu Aho.
It's 6:05. The England lock, Courtney Lawes, believes his side and the All Blacks are the two best teams in the world, and he's expecting a monumental battle in Saturday night's Rugby World Cup semi-final in Yokohama. Both teams were standouts in the quarterfinals with convincing wins against their opponents. Lawes says the All Blacks forward pack and backline are the obvious benchmark, but he's confident the English can match them in every position.
They've got a great pack. They've got a lot of great players across the board. So have we. So you got two of the best packs in the world going up against each other, and it'll be a good contest.
England lock, Courtney Lawes. Meanwhile, promotion is on the line in domestic rugby when Bay of Plenty hosts Hawke's Bay in the championship final in Rotorua tonight. Hawke's Bay back Sam McNichol says making the premiership is the aim for all the sides in the second tier competition.
It's sort of like the little brothers down in the championship, even though there's probably a few teams in there that are good enough to be in the top. Only one team can go up each year, so it's always a goal to try and get back up there and test themselves against the Canterbury, Auckland, Wellington likes, and get back up into the top group.
Kick-off is at 7:30 tonight. And in the netball, Australia coach Lisa Alexander says her players are still hurting after last week's 1-goal loss to New Zealand in the Constellation Cup. But she's confident they will make amends in the series decider in Perth on Sunday. The Silver Ferns have to win the match to take out the 4-game series as the Diamonds retain the cup on goal difference if the teams come away with 2 games apiece. That's the news.
Country Life's keeping its hands in its pockets this week. We're at a sale of a beef breed that's new to New Zealand, the Speckle Park.
21,000, 21,000, 21,000.
As a breed globally, they're the fastest growing breed.
They'll turn manufacturing beef into prime cattle.
I don't know, they're just like a designer calf, eh?
At $25,250 bison.
Country Life, Friday nights at 9 and Saturday mornings after the 7 o'clock news on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. Northland to Manawatu, including Coromandel, Bay of Plenty and Central High Country. Cloudy periods tonight with a chance of a shower or two in the west, mainly fine tomorrow. Gisborne, Hawke's Bay and Wairarapa, a few showers tonight, fine tomorrow. Horowhenua, Kapiti and Wellington, mainly fine but cloudy periods tomorrow with late showers near the ranges. For Nelson, Marlborough and Canterbury, mainly fine. Isolated showers about the ranges and Banks Peninsula tonight. Bulla and Westland, showers north of Hokitika, clearing overnight, scattered rain or drizzle developing in Westland tomorrow evening. Fiordland, mainly fine, rain developing tomorrow. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods with a few showers tonight, fine and warm tomorrow, but showers about Stewart Island. Chatham Islands, occasional showers, gradually clearing tomorrow. RNZ National, it's 6:08.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. Compass Housing says it's confident it has fulfilled its responsibilities to an elderly man who may have been emaciated in his squalid unit for several days before he died in hospital this morning. Notorious bank robber and former long-time prisoner Leslie Morris Green, who was in his 80s, had been living at a South Auckland complex run by the New Zealand arm of the not-for-profit Australian company. Compass houses vulnerable people, and as part of its contract with the government, it is expected to connect tenants to, quote, appropriate social supports. The General Manager of Compass Housing New Zealand, Bernadette Pinnell, told me 2 other tenants at the complex had raised concerns for the welfare of Leslie Green on October 14. A Compass Housing staff member went to check on him 3 days later.
They knocked on the door. He didn't allow them into the property, so he came to the door and he spoke to the staff member at the door. So we have a tenant relations officer. He spoke to her. He indicated that he was fine. He wasn't feeling particularly well, but he was fine, and he, didn't need anything. He didn't want anything. He's very private and has kept to himself. As I said, he has his routine where he, says hello and goodbye to people as he passes, but he doesn't generally engage. He wants to keep himself to himself, and we respect that.
And did your staff member describe the way he looked? Whether he looked well, fit? Well, in respect to his age and in respect to the condition that he's been in, he is a very fit-looking individual because of, riding his bike as frequently as he does and his lifestyle. He was indicated as being frail, and that's why we made contact with the city mission. So your staff member recognised that he appeared frail on the day that they visited? Yes, but, we took his, he didn't seem excessively frail. He just didn't look particularly well, and that's why we then asked about his welfare, and that's why we made the site visit. So what day? Had a follow-up site visit. What day was that site visit? On Thursday, the 17th. Okay. So 3 days. Yeah, 3 days after the residents raised concerns. Now you say that person didn't enter the unit. When was the last time the unit was inspected? So we conduct 2 inspections per year, or more frequently if we have concerns about the condition of the property. And so when was that unit last inspected? It was last inspected in September. And were any concerns raised about the conditions inside the unit at that time? We have to respect the privacy of the tenants and obviously our interactions with him. If we felt that there wasn't proper care, that the condition of the property was a risk to him, then we would have escalated that. Okay. Are you aware of the condition of the property right now? Have you been inside there? Not today, no. It appears to have maggots. It is filthy. It smells. There is considerable amount of rubbish on the floor, food scraps, and the mattress is heavily soiled and potentially infected with bed bugs. There's also considerable rubbish at the rear of the unit as you come to the door, including food scraps. Did your staff member notice anything untoward when they went to that unit? Because at the entrance today, there is enough there to raise a red flag, one would argue.
No, it wasn't raised.
Are you aware of the condition inside the unit currently?
Not today, no, I haven't been inside the unit today.
Has anyone raised with you the condition of the unit, or are you hearing this for the first time?
We are aware from previous visits of a pattern of behaviour which has been addressed in previous visits.
So can you tell us a bit more about that? What do you mean?
So when we conduct inspections, we have a property condition report and we keep a record of the property condition. And then if there's any issues, then we address the issues with the property condition.
So have you had to address issues with the property condition? Because basically what I'm saying, Bernadette, is it absolutely squalid, that unit right now.
The timing of this conversation is very insensitive to his family. And whilst I appreciate what you're trying to point to, I think the timing of this is very insensitive.
Have you spoken to his family?
We've put a call into him and to the family representative, but I haven't spoken to him.
The reason I'm asking about the unit is I'm wondering, do you think that any responsibility you might have to Mr. Green, that you have fulfilled that?
Yes.
How so?
Well, we've respected his rights. We've given opportunities for issues to be remedied. We've followed the processes in terms of what's available to us. If things have escalated to a point over the last couple of weeks and we haven't been aware of it, then we can't address it. So when the staff member went to site, we had no indication that there would be any issues with the property. So our concern, we were there for a funeral of another tenant, unfortunately. And when I spoke to the hospital, I get an indication of the condition of his health.
So you weren't aware things had got this bad for him?
No, not over the last 2 weeks.
I know it's a difficult balance here between trying to help and respecting a person's rights. Are you indicating that Mr. Green did not want any of your help?
He wanted to retain his privacy, and we did balance that with his rights, with his, health and well-being. And so we didn't want to stress him. And so when we addressed issues that we had previously, we did that in a sensitive manner, but we addressed it. And we would continue to address it with any of our tenants.
And that was the General Manager of Compass Housing New Zealand, Bernadette Purnell. There are 80 minutes of rugby between the All Blacks in a historic World Cup final, and their opponents in tomorrow's semi-final, England, have never beaten the All Blacks in a World Cup. But there's a first time for everything, and some say this is England's best chance. That sounds almost sacrilegious, doesn't it? New Zealanders here will be glued to the screen from 9 p.m. tomorrow night, including the staff and students of Francis Douglas Memorial College in New Plymouth. And there's no prizes for guessing who they're going to be watching out for. It's Barrett's all the way, especially now that Scott Barrett is the surprise starting selection at blindside flanker. Scott is joining his brother Bowden in the starting 15 with Geordie coming off the bench. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin is in their hometown and visited their old school.
The Barrett brothers are all Francis Douglas old boys and starred in the school's first 15. Deputy Principal Tim Stuck had the pleasure of coaching all three, not that he's taking the credit for where they've ended up.
I think their work ethic and their understanding of the game, but it stems from probably playing footy in the backyard and then going to school down the coast, coming into Francis Douglas Memorial College and then heading on to a greener pasture as well.
Don't want to take too much of the credit yourself?
Absolutely not. No, there's a number of coaches that they've had along the way that have had an impact, and I suspect the environment that they're in at the moment, those coaches have done a pretty good job with them.
But Mr Stuck reckons there could just be something in the water at Francis Douglas.
Yeah, it was nice to see 20% of the team on Saturday was All Blacks. Hopefully this week it's another 20%. Hey, listen, I think the boys here just want to improve every day, whether that be in school or out in the sporting field. And I think it's a bit of a culture around here to be the best that we can be, and certainly it shows that they've done that.
As for which Barrett is best, Mr Stark leaves it for others to decide. First 15 player Abraham Matatini opts for a forward.
For me, it's probably Scott Barrett. He's got the biggest work rate on him, I'd say.
Year 11 student Noah Lash is looking for Geordie to make an impact from the bench.
Yeah, it's got to be Geordie. Yeah, my favourite. It's got to be Geordie because he's like massive and he can just kick from anywhere.
When pressed, Caleb Fleming gives the nod to the elder brother.
Oh, Barrett family, definitely.
Who's the Barrett extraordinary?
Oh, got to be Bodie. Unreal. It's unreal.
And it's Abraham, perhaps, who sums up best what it means to the school when the Barrett brothers don the black jersey.
They're the legends of the school, legends of Taranaki. Everyone loves them. They're definitely into people to aspire to be, They carry the school out there with them when they're playing, and it's just awesome to watch. It's kind of why I came to the school, really. But yeah, it's definitely something to aspire to and work hard towards.
At a downtown watering hole, the president of the Taranaki Rugby Supporters Club, Grant Hassel, says there is an immense sense of pride in what the Barretts have achieved, even if only one of them has ever pulled on the jersey of the mighty Amber and Blacks.
I think from a Taranaki perspective, it's the fact that they're just one of us. And it gives that realism, I suppose, that actually it doesn't matter if you're from Palmerston North, Ponsonby or Pangarehu. This New Zealand All Black side is something that encapsulates you all.
And as an old boy of New Plymouth Boys High School, Mr Hassel had to reluctantly acknowledge the role of Francis Douglas in their success.
I have to be careful about that, but you've got to tip your hat to the success that Francis Douglas has had in the last few years in terms of producing high quality rugby players. Of course, Liam Coltman is also in Japan at the moment, and he was also educated at the college. And not so far back, of course, Conrad Smith also went through there.
As for how the tournament's going to play out, Noah Lash has got it all figured out.
It's got to be All Blacks. I reckon we're going to come in over England.
Score?
I'm going to say it's going to be pretty close, so maybe about like 20-16 or something.
And the final?
I reckon it's going to be Wales, New Zealand. I reckon we'll crush Wales though. Be like 30-15 maybe.
All Blacks on 3! 1, 2, 3!
I ngā mutu mo te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Robin Martin ahau.
And the All Blacks will return to familiar territory for tomorrow's semi-final. The host city for New Zealand's opening pool match against South Africa, Yokohama is also the venue for both semi-finals and next weekend's final. Around an hour south of Tokyo by train, the city is the birthplace of rugby in Japan, with Asia's first club established there more than 150 years ago. Reporter Clay Wilson and videographer Dan Cook went to check out the city where the All Blacks hope to clinch a third straight World Cup crown.
It's hard to imagine now, but on Saturday the Rinko Park fan zone here in Yokohama will be swarming with rugby fans. Many of those will be decked out in their All Blacks and England jerseys, cheering on their team in a World Cup semi-final. Their eyes will be fixated on this screen for 80 minutes, hoping their team is the one to advance to the title decider.
Well, I watched the quarterfinals and was very confident after that, so we're glad we brought our tickets to come over here, and we don't make the final, well, we're selling them. Hopefully to some pom that's got plenty of money.
Having travelled all the way from Tokoroa hoping to watch the All Blacks lift the World Cup,
Rex is one of many Kiwis set to flock to Yokohama over the next 2 days. But it won't be just black jerseys, with fans from England, South Africa and Wales also in town to support their teams. Springboks fans Willem and Suzanne from Johannesburg are confident their side can not only beat Wales, but go all the way.
Yes, every 12 years is our turn, so it's 12 years.
2007, 2019, hopefully.
It's our turn.
English fans are also feeling optimistic after their thumping quarter-final win over Australia. Mike from South London has a message for Kiwi supporters.
Your time is coming. Nobody likes a cocky Kiwi, and you've been unbearable for so many years now. You know, fluked it against France that time. It's just a matter of time. You're going to have one bad game at the right moment, and that'll be it.
Joe from London is in Japan for the tournament with his father, Kevin. He says England's convincing victory over Australia filled them with confidence, but not for too long.
We were, until we saw the Kiwis' performance. That was very strong. So hopefully it'll be a good game. Eddie's always got a bit of tactics. Eddie Jones, the England coach, he'll find something, I'm sure, to try and rile them before kick-off anyway.
Jones is already doing his best, saying all the pressure is on the All Blacks, leaving England to relax and enjoy the week. And Rex from Tokoroa was happy to allow them that.
Yeah, well, they can enjoy the week and then they can fly back home, hopefully on Sunday or Monday, whenever they head back. Yeah. No, you don't listen to Eddie, mate. He's a typical Aussie.
Nevertheless, Jones has added more spice to what was already a mouth-watering matchup. The atmosphere inside Yokohama Stadium, which has a capacity of 72,000, is also set to be electric. All Blacks fans Liam, Charlotte and Kane just want the English supporters to stay nice and quiet.
I hope we can hear the haka this time.
Yeah. I think Kiwi crowds are very quiet. You know, especially England might bring a bit more noise, be a bit louder. Hopefully they don't get on top, so I don't have to listen to Swing Low for too long.
So which fans will be celebrating on the streets here in Yokohama's famous Chinatown come Saturday night? In a little more than 48 hours we will have our answer. But you can guarantee the hordes of Kiwis set to descend on Japan's second largest city will be hoping it's their team that emerges victorious. In Yokohama for Checkpoint, Clay Wilson.
And if you're listening on radio as you drive away, perhaps on your long weekend, if you want to look back, you can see that piece from Clay Wilson and Dan Cook, that video item. We'll put it up on our Facebook page and our web page. It's almost 25 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Former Green MPs are unhappy that the party is going against the grain by showing support for legislation on terrorism suppression laws. The Green Party has given initial support for the terror suppression bill after negotiating changes such as making sure foreign convictions and deportations are not accepted without proper scrutiny. It's the latest in a string of topics that have illustrated the growing divide among the old guard and the new wave of Greens. Here's political reporter Charlie Drever.
The Green Party this week has been no stranger to criticism from former MPs. Just yesterday, former co-leader and now Greenpeace Executive Director Russell Norman berated the party for not putting agriculture into the ETS and a lack of climate action. And now former MPs are at odds over the terrorism suppression bill. Former Green MP Catherine Delahunty says even with the changes, it is still disappointing.
Overall, these kind of bills, which the Greens have had a tradition of opposing, are not going to make the world safer. They're not the direction we need to go in. They're actually a very narrowly focused, potentially reduction in human rights for certain people.
Catherine Delahunty says there are other ways to make the country safer from terrorism.
It would be much more sensible to get out of the Five Eyes network to make ourselves less of a target for people like ISIS and actually stop being part of some of the terror that countries like the United States actually visit around the world. And we need to educate our population so that they understand why the big risk, which is white supremacy, is unacceptable and how to address that.
She says she knows the Greens would be under pressure from Labour, but trying to suppress terrorism doesn't work. Former Green MP Sue Bradford was also against the party showing its support for the bill.
There are such risks in this legislation, and in the past the party would have really been leading the charge against it. But this is just one part of the overall picture of what's happened to the Green Party in recent years, which I'm really sad about.
Sue Bradford says they've clearly been forced into a compromise.
I really fear for their ability to negotiate inside this government. New Zealand First seems to be much more able to hold lines and hold its position, whereas the Greens seem to bend far more and really sacrifice a lot of those original principles.
But MP and Green Party Defence spokesperson Golriz Garaman says the party is still working on further improvements and the decision was led by party reps and the full caucus.
We're also led by our human rights kaupapa, and I think if the Greens were ever in a position to stop what the National Party was proposing, that every Green MP, past and present, would do all they could to do that, and that's what we did.
She says having no bill was never an option, so it was either an improved bill or one with Nationals provisions. But it's not just former MPs showing their displeasure with the direction of the party. At the Greens AGM earlier this year, Jack McDonald, who was a highly ranked member of the party, said he would no longer run as a candidate. He blamed the centrist leadership under James Shaw, indicating an interesting upcoming election year for the party. From Parliament, for Checkpoint, ko Charlie Drever, DNA.
And time for some of your feedback before we go this evening in relation to the story about the elderly man who died in hospital after tenants at his Compass housing complex in South Auckland raised concerns about his welfare. Chris has got in touch to say clearly Compass is only interested in the property and not the people. Totally shameful, says Chris. They cannot be allowed to carry on. Just a point, Chris, they are a not for profit. Hey, and not all of you are super enthusiastic about the rugby on the weekend. This person says so bored with the rugby, not news. And this one? Opiate for the masses, they say. Hey, but if you are interested in the rugby, all our video stories from today's show over in Japan will go up onto our Facebook page and our website. And also the other video stories from the week and the fire, the coverage from the fire at the Sky City Convention Centre, they're all there as well. And they sort of create an amazing timeline of the coverage of that fire. But the last word goes to this texter, and it is indeed on the rugby. They say, what about the All Blacks hairstyles? Any other useless non-news? Perhaps some details on their bowel movements. I'll work on that one and get back to you after the long weekend. If you are lucky enough to be enjoying the long weekend, do take care on our roads and we will catch you next Tuesday. Enjoy.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The social housing provider Compass has told Checkpoint the man who died in squalid conditions in its Papatoetoe flats wanted little to do with staff, so they respected his privacy. The man accused of murdering Fiona Mackay-Patea was greeted with shouts of support from the public gallery when he appeared in court today. Sky City is cleaning up its precinct so business can return to normal after the fire at its Auckland Convention Centre, but some owners are still feeling the effects of having to close. And the inauguration of Wellington City Councillors and its mayor-elect will go ahead next week, despite the ousted mayor applying for a vote recount. Those are the headlines. Our next news is at 7.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
New Zealand's a great example of how not to do terrorism legislation.
Live with local, national and international stories and a slice of creativity.
I was trying to find a good sound effect of the Concords, but that's